Hey folks, alright, we're back with week 3 of Prepping Data Challenges with SQL for 2023. Okay, so now on week 3 we're starting with this new data set about different targets we've got here. We also will be diving back into week 1's data set as well. So we've got a list of instructions I've put here in my SQL editor, commented out, just so I can keep it all in Snowflake for you. Okay, let's start up. So for the transaction files, filter the transactions just to look at DSB, so Data School Bank. Okay, so if I go back to week one table, on my select star, give me all the columns from this first table. So yes, I want just to look at these ones, these DSBs. So if you recall from week 1, we were using a function called split part. We were using that transaction code. We were splitting on that dash. Yep, so we get our bank field coming back here. So we want to filter this. So if you go and take this column, I go and say, hey, where? So my filter, where that equals DSB. Okay, so you should see all those just coming back for DSB. Yep, so all my values that were previously 1 have now become online, 2 are now in person. Okay, change the date to be the quarter. So we had some issues with this date time field here because it's come through, if we remember, so it's come through as a string, so varchar variable character 255 characters in length. So we need to convert it to a date, to a timestamp. I'm going to just do a date in this case because we then want to be able to then use some of those date functionalities to change it to the quarter. So if I go and try and run a date on this, so I'm going to get this issue. So it doesn't understand this format, and with the timestamp. So what you need to do after this is give it a format. So if you press comma and then quote these, you will then be able to enter your format. Okay, so if you run this, it's complaining because this matches the beginning but doesn't account for this bit at the end. So you can be sneaky. You can use the string function to go, let's say, left of transaction date 10. What that will do is just take those first 10 characters, so just the date, and then that will work. Okay, so yeah, that's coming through there. You can see it as a date. But I want to get it so it does the whole timestamp, converts it to a date. But get rid of that, get rid of left. Run that. Yep, you can see my data has come through, no errors, that's all good. Now I just need to go and say, go find that date part. Date part, I want a quarter. I'm a Tableau user. I know that date part is one word in Tableau. In Snowflake, other versions of SQL has this little underscore in it. Let's run that. Okay, so that's coming back. So sum the transaction values for each quarter and type of transaction. Okay, so I just need to group by these two. So I've got bring in my value. I don't need this column anymore. So this is just what I need. So I need online in person, I need my quarters, and I need my different values. Okay. Now I just need to do that aggregation. So I need to total up the values. Okay, so it's going to complain about me. Not complain about me, but complain at me that online and person is not a valid group by expression. So what I've done is I've provided an aggregation here, but not to other parts. So I want to fix these in one way or another. So to do this, I need to go and add a group by expression. So group by, my next statement here. I need to go and add those two columns in here. So okay, group by that first column, and then my next one. You will need to remove any aliases, otherwise this will not run. Gotta say, it's a bit heavy on the eyes with all this going on in the group by. Again, it's not always my preference to do this, but you can always do, say, 1, 2. This will group by your first column and then your second column. Okay, for the targets file, pivot the quarterly targets. So we have a row for each type of transaction in the quarter. Oh, okay. So I'm going to put a semicolon there. And I'm going to move on to that targets file. Okay, for the targets file, pivot the targets here. So we have one row for each type of transaction and each quarter. So it wants me to turn these into a column. Okay, it says pivot in this case, but the function I'm going to need to use is called unpivot, which will determine how I want to specify these columns, what I want to call the column, and what's going to happen with the values, what that's going to be called. So I need to go first of all and write out what I want the table to look like first in terms of the column names, and then I'm going to specify how that unpivot is going to work. Okay, it's a little confusing, I've got to say, but just bear with me. So if I want that online and person column there, I then want my quarters, my quarter, and I also want my targets. So I'm going to bring that in there. So I can bring in my targets. Next, after my from my table, I want to do unpivot bracket. So in here, I want to specify what happens for each of these. So I want my values to be my target for my quarters in these different column names. So Q1. So you can see here it's taken those columns before, Q1, 2, 3 to 4. It has turned it into a column called quarter. Yeah. So down here, those values that were in those columns are now part of a column called target. Okay, so a little confusing syntax, but that's how you get that pivot or unpivot in this case to work. Next up is rename the fields. I've kind of done that. Move the Q from the quarter field and make it numerical. Okay, so I would do my replace. So to do that type conversion again in Snowflake, I can do double colon and then change this to say an int or integer. That will convert it to a number. You might be using something like Microsoft SQL and you may want to do cast, and then you do cast your column as an integer. Now I just want to rename this back to quarter. Join the two data sets together. So I've got online person, quarter, and target. Got here online person, quarter, and my total values. Okay, so we're pretty close. It's just how you bring these two together. So I'm going to use a common table expression. So this is a way where I can store one query and then use it later on in another table, in another query. If you haven't seen it before, it's pretty powerful. So if I call this declared with my common table expression, I'm going to be very unoriginal and call it CTE, you may see it as. So with CTE as bracket, this thing. So CTEs are like, I've basically encapsulated this query in common table expression. So if you go and write select star from CTE, I can run this. And that is equivalent to just running that query in here. Okay, so CTE just does this query here. But the nice thing is I can now join to this as if it was a table. I can reuse it multiple times. Yeah, it basically acts like a table, but just in the context of this query. So if I'm going to go and join these two together, so I need to go and bring this in here. So I'm going to give targets an alias as T, of course. I'm going to go and do an inner join to my on my CTE and call this as V for values on. So I'm going to need to do this statement. I'm going to need to do two statements in this case. So I want to join online in person and by quarter. So I'm going to go first on Oh, ambiguous column name quarter. Okay, great. So I will change this to T. Numerical value Q1 not recognized. So we know that this ran okay before, so we're able to get rid of the Q and convert it to an integer. Issue is here in this join. So I've taken quarter here. It's not taking this quarter, it's taking this one. So before we did that process of removing Q. So what I need to do is take this, place it with this. So we're going to copy and paste this in here into my join. I'm going to press play on that. Okay, so you can see now that's run successfully. I've got everything I had here, my person equivalent and my target. I've also got these values coming back as well. This is really good. Okay, so that's good. That's the 8 rows you wanted, and we can see that there. Calculate the variance from target to each row. So in this case, variance just means the difference between this, so how off the target we were or how above. There we go. So we can see here, first case we were over by in 2000 and then under in other quarters. That about wraps it up for week 3. I'm going to put this on my GitHub account for you all to take a look at. Thanks for your time. Join me back in week 4. Bye.